Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. You know what would make today just that much better? If you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Chicken Man Sam. Hospice nurse demands I bring exactly what she ordered. My job is a bit strange. I work for a company that provides equipment, beds, O2, wheelchairs, etc. to patients on hospice care. This can be one of two ways. 1. In home with family, or 2. In an assisted living facility. This story involves the latter. I got an order today for an emergency O2 setup. This normally includes an O2 concentrator, think specialized air compressor, a couple of backup tanks, a tank cart/pouch, and all the tubes and equipment for those. I immediately noticed that this order is odd. First, on the order are 2 of our biggest O2 tanks outside of liquid O2, M60 for those in the medical and gas field. These are large 24-pound tanks of O2 that are reserved usually for high-liter flow patients, or those who live in excess of 2 hours from their nearest warehouse. While this on its own isn't odd, that fact that it was relatively close to my warehouse and the concentrator was only a 5-liter one had me questioning. On top of that, the order also had one of our smallest tanks, B tank, which are the kind you usually see people carrying in pouches while out walking. Third, there was a tank for a third size of tank, E tank, that is our standard but wasn't on this order. And finally, to top it all off, there were no regulators, which are the devices needed to extract the O2 from the tanks in a controlled manner. And given the order, there should have been 2 different kinds, as M60s take a different regulator than E or B. Obviously, this order was wrong, and I wanted to make sure I was providing the correct equipment. I figured either the hospice company had a non-nurse input orders, pretty common, which resulted in accidentally getting M60 instead of E-tanks. A standard O2 setup for our company is 2 E-tanks and 1 B-tank, with each concentrator in case of emergency or travel. Or they'd forgotten to add the regulators and just added the card out of reflex. I decided to call the hospice nurse, whose number was in the patient notes, and clarify what equipment was needed. I say, "Hi, this is OP with Health Company. I'm calling in regards to your order for patient." Nurse Karen says, "Yes," with the nastiest tone you could imagine. Me telling myself that she's had a stressful day as healthcare's brutal. I have a few questions regarding the equipment ordered. Some of the equipment is incompatible and/or missing. Nurse Karen responds with, "I know what I ordered, just hurry up and bring it. Can't you see it's a stat order?" I say, "Yes ma'am, I'm just trying to ensure that we're providing the correct equipment for the patient. Some of this equipment doesn't seem needed and others are missing key parts." She says, "I'm a nurse and you're just a freaking delivery driver. You don't know what you're talking about. Do not question my decisions and just bring what I freaking ordered now." I say, "Right away, ma'am. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Now, I may not be a nurse, but I've been doing this a while, so I go ahead and load up the order. But I also load the regulators that they might need as well as the standard O2 tanks, just in case. While I was down to maliciously comply, I didn't want to endanger a patient. I figured I'd let the facility staff know, give them the extra equipment, and let the hospice nurse suffer when the facility reported on her incompetence. I get there and screen into the facility where I'm directed to the nurse's station for the patient's unit. I have all the equipment ordered by Nurse Karen on a cart, and I'm going to give her one more chance. When I get to the nurse's station, the facility nurses point me in the direction of the hospice nurse. I stop to talk to her, trying to show her the issue. She immediately shuts me down again and tells me to just do your freaking job. She then tells me the room number and walks off. I get to the room and I'm surprised to see the regional supervisor for the hospice company, who I had met a few times before as she liked to greet all the new patients when she was in the area. We got to talking and this is how it went. Awesome manager said, "Hey OP, are you here to set the patient up?" I said, "Yep, although there might be an issue with the order." I then wheel in the cart. The awesome manager says, "Why do you have those tanks? The patient's on 2 liters, they don't need that." I say, "I figured it was a mix-up and tried calling Nurse Karen to confirm, but she very rudely insisted that I bring this out exactly as she ordered it. She also didn't order any regulators." The awesome manager says, "What? What if the facility loses power or the concentrator goes down?" I say, "I tried explaining, but she just insisted to bring this. Don't worry though, I've got extras in my truck. Do you want the normal O2 setup?" Awesome manager says, "Yes, thank you. I'll be sure to look into Nurse Karen's conduct." I did my order, chatted with the facility staff, and left. Didn't see Nurse Karen or awesome manager again. I thought that was the end. But it turns out that awesome manager called my boss while I was out doing the rest of my orders. Apparently, he wanted to thank me for knowing what I'm doing and letting him know. They started looking into Nurse Karen's other patients and found that she was constantly ordering incorrect equipment and the other techs were just quietly correcting it for her. Easier than calling, honestly, and what I would have done if my day hadn't been so light. Awesome manager told my boss that he had let Nurse Karen go and that she would no longer be an issue. Apparently, I had saved the hospice company thousands of dollars in potential malpractice and neglect lawsuits. Let me ask you guys something. A nurse like this, who disregarded patient safety, didn't follow good procedure, was rude in conduct, and then was fired to prevent getting into trouble with malpractice and lawsuits, do you think that kind of thing should be on a record so that any other future employer in this field knows there is a massive red flag on this Karen? Or do you think that they should be allowed to learn from their mistakes and get a second chance? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Our next story is by Jorkfully. Manager wanted my makeup to be fashion model worthy. I worked the spa front desk at a northern Michigan resort and spa while I was in high school back in the early 2000s. All of the other front desk staff were very attractive women in their 20s to 30s, but we got along quite well despite the age difference because I was willing to take care of the undesirable tasks while they gossiped at the desk. I was a fairly attractive teenager that was sometimes plagued with hormonal acne. The wonderful estheticians that I worked with provided many treatments to try and clear it up, but teenage hormones can overpower almost everything sometimes. One time, there was a particularly bad breakout where they recommended that I kept my face clean and didn't mess with it. We had a new manager that saw me the next morning and demanded that I cover my face and makeup to align with the polished high-quality clientele that we catered to. My hair, nails, and attire were all very professional, and I tried to explain that one of the estheticians recommended that I didn't put anything extra on my face to further exacerbate the breakout. The manager refused to listen and insisted that I looked as good as one of the models in the magazines available for guests while they were waiting. Cue malicious compliance. I went over to the makeup application area and placed some neon pink eyeshadow in a rectangle from ear to ear across my eyes and nose, matching a model from the most recent Vogue publication from our waiting area. I walked up to the manager and said, "I now match the fashion magazines as you've requested." Two of the other front desk girls started gushing about how stylish I was. They were being supportive because they knew about my acne struggles and they were also not a big fan of the new manager. The manager was clearly annoyed but couldn't do anything because I did exactly what she said to do. She mumbled, "Fine," and went back into the office area, slamming the door. I think that was the last and only time anyone has ever called me fashionable. Now, I don't know a lot about makeup, but I do know that if you're having a breakout, the last thing you want to do is put more makeup on top of it because it can, well, make it a lot worse. Isn't it tragic that it can be such a terrible cycle? You break out, you want to cover it up. You break out even more because you covered it up. There's no winners. This next story is by R. Dun Kang. Received someone else's frequently flyer gift. My new wife and I recently took a trip to Denver on a United flight. I fly often, but not as often as some other people. When I booked the flight, the plane was fairly empty, so I booked the window and aisle seats in premium economy section right behind the first class seats, leaving the middle seat empty. By the time we actually flew, the flight was nearly full, so I checked the seat chart and noticed someone took the seat between us. No biggie, when we get on the flight, we'll just offer the window or the aisle seat to whoever booked the middle seat. Boarding time came and we were in group 2, so the pre-boards in group 1 got to go before us. When it was our turn to board and we got to our seats, there was an older man sitting in the window seat. I thought that was kind of a jerk move to just take someone else's seat without asking. Obviously this guy's flown before since he had pre-boarding status without having young kids, was not disabled, and definitely wasn't in the military. I let it go since we were going to switch seats anyway. Soon after the flight took off, the attendant came up to me with a gift bag and congratulated me for achieving 1K status. The gift bag wasn't for me, it was for the guy that took the window seat without asking. He obviously knew what he was doing and has probably done this before. The guy was looking out the window all through boarding and never turned his head to acknowledge us until the flight attendant came over with the gift bag. I accepted his gift bag, and the flight attendant asked if I'd like a complimentary drink as well. Of course I said yes, and even got a free glass of wine for my wife too. I glanced at the guy and could see anger in his eyes, but he didn't say a thing. Petty win for me over this guy that took my seat that I would have given him, but instead he took it without asking. Well, in my book, if you're gonna steal someone else's seat, and that seat you previously had turned out to be a winner, well, sucks to be you. You chose to give that seat up. Our next story is by Echelon Knight, Giving What You Get. Many years ago, I worked in tech support for a small software company. We prided ourselves on customer service and had beaten much larger companies to have the #1 selling product nationally in our field. We had overseas agents who, despite training, would ask the same questions over and over again. They would email these though to our support address, and they were always marked urgent. They were being particularly difficult because they'd been called out on not helping the regional clients, who were coming directly to us for support. On one occasion, one agent emailed through a request that they'd been answered several times before in previous months. Our policy was a 24-hour turnaround time on support requests. All of the support officers were on calls and couldn't reply immediately. 1 hour later, they send the same email 14 more times. This wasn't some glitch. You could see multiple signatures where they'd copied the previous email and just pasted it in again. Being that the operations manager was in the management committee meeting with all the top end of the company, and I was the senior support officer, one fed-up support officer comes to me and says, "Why do they expect that they can be responded to immediately, especially considering that we've answered this one just 2 weeks ago? What am I supposed to do? Apologize that I didn't drop everything to answer an already answered question and be treated like poop by them at the same time?" Another support officer pipes up with, "I gave them the answer to this 3 times in the last month." This agent had been particularly painful in the last 6 months, unreasonably demanding and abusive in every interaction, so I decided we should make a point. I say, "Well, we're supposed to respond to all customer and agent inquiries. You just got 15 inquiries. You should queue up a reply to each one and send all 15 back at the same time." Support Officer 1 says, "Then we'll get in poop for being jerks back to them." And I say, "So? Why should we always cop the abuse? Let's see how they like to be treated this way." Smiling maniacally, both Support Officer 2 and 1 laugh, and number 1 says, "Right?" Support Officer 1 proceeds to type out a response highlighting that it had been answered multiple times and as per our previous correspondence, blah blah blah. Preps 15 replies and clicks send one after the other until they're all gone. Not 15 minutes go by and the agent calls back to speak to the operations manager on a serious and urgent matter, insisting that he be pulled from the meeting to deal with him. The ops manager takes the call, then comes to see us wanting to know what's happening. By this time, the CEO and head of sales have also been told. Operations manager says, "What's happening? I've got a regional agent on the line complaining how he's been treated. He's saying that you're being offensive and unprofessional. Why have you sent the same email 15 times? What's the story?" So we tell them. After all that, the operations manager says, "Right, they're getting told." The operations manager on the phone to the agent says, "My guys only did to you what you did to them. If you can't take it, don't dish it out." The CEO says, "Hey operations manager, tell them to expect a call from me regarding the professionalism clause in their contracts." How can you be the one to, on the first foot, send 14 emails and act all unprofessional and upset yourself? And then when somebody's already re-answering a question to begin with from the first email, sends back the other 14 as well, you run off to mama being like, "Oh, they're being unprofessional to me, they were mean to me." Legitimately, the best metaphor I could have for this is if there's 2 kids, one punches the other in the arm, the other, obviously upset, retaliates by slapping the other on their arm, and then the one that initiates it goes running off to mom. Mom comes over like, "What's the problem? What happened here?" And it's like, "Surprise, what did you expect? You punch them. You expect them to just take it and smile?" But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So, of all these stories that I've read today, what's your personal favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.